You're watching InTechnology, a video cast where you can get smarter about cybersecurity, sustainability, and technology. Here are your hosts, Tom Garrison and Camille Morhart.
Hi, and welcome to the InTechnology podcast. I'm your host, Tom Garrison. With me, as always, is my co-host, Camille Morhart. And today we have Nicolas Babin. He is president of Babin Business Consulting, a European Commission digital ambassador, member of the top link expert group of the World Economic Forum, and a globally recognized key opinion leader in new technologies. He's a serial entrepreneur with experience that spans startups to multinational tech giants globally. So welcome to the podcast, Nicolas.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Camille. It's great to be here. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, so today we want to take a topic that generally everybody's heard about if you're in the tech industry recently, and that's ChatGPT and more generally generative AI. So can we start first with how do you describe ChatGPT and generative AI?
I would describe it as human augmented tool. Let me explain a little bit about that. I was part of the team that invented Aibo, the robot you see in the background, which is a talking dog launched back in 1999. It was the first AI-based robot. When we started to work on Aibo, we thought we would look into ethics around AI because it was the first one, right? So we had to invent everything from scratch. We invented the way to communicate with a robot. And the way we did it at the time, because we didn't have the technology, nor the bandwidth, nor the latency, and all these that we can find today, was to pre-record about 100 sentences. So Aibo would understand 100 sentences. And you can ask Aibo, take a picture in English, in Japanese, and we could communicate in simple words and simple sentences with Aibo. What we find today is the fourth version of a human augmented tool that has already indexed absolutely every single information that exists digitally on the web and can basically get the right information at the right time, but differently depending on also your own use of it. What I mean is that Tom's use or Camille's use of ChatGPT or GPT-4 will actually be different than mine because I have a different way of communicating, I have different interests. So no two people asking ChatGPT at the same time, the same question will get the same answer. I hear a lot of people saying it's revolution. Bill Gates said the most important revolution today in terms of tech. To me, it's an evolution. We're on a journey. That journey started even before Aibo back in 1955 when they invented the term artificial intelligence at Dartmouth. It's part of this evolution and it's part of making sure that at least human is augmented. What I mean by that is that humans will get their boring tasks, the mundane tasks done, but human needs to be at the center of ChatGPT.
Can you describe a bit just about the technology itself? How does it work?
The way it works is you have an architecture of an algorithm, which is based on the neuronic architecture of the brain. That they started to work on it in 1993. And the idea was how to get information processed and how to get information stored, because the way the human brain works, you answer based on your knowledge. Well, I guess we do it naturally, but basically the brain knows where the information is stored, gets the information from there, and it goes extremely fast. I mean, obviously, there's no latency. Tom asked me a question, I answer immediately because I know how to use my brain. And that's what we started to work on artificial intelligence. So what I understand from ChatGPT is that it has indexed. So you're talking about a very, very large database, what we call the big data. Any type of information has been entered into that big data database or structure. And what's really interesting is the fact that today you could get any type of data. So you're talking about emails, you're talking about videos, audios, audio data, you're talking about Word documents, Excel, spreadsheet, anything can now, with technology the way it is, can now be recorded into the architecture. And based on that, the natural language processing element of it is capable of understanding the sentence, understanding the main subject of the sentence, and going into that big data in a very fast way. And that's how ChatGPT does it. So that basically is really a 10,000-mile view of ChatGPT does what ChatGPT does.
What uses do you see of ChatGPT? I think there's like these sort of carnival use cases that people are kind of coming up with right now, where it doesn't really do anything. It's just sort of a little entertaining that the computer seems to be sort of talking back to you. But how do you see the ChatGPT use cases evolving in what I would say is maybe a more professional context?
Every single profession today can use ChatGPT. Doctors can use ChatGPTs because at the end, when they have to do a report on the procedures that they have performed or on a simple appointment that they had with a patient, they can use ChatGPT. So customer support, the customer experience is going to be improved because we've all experienced chatbots at the beginning where press one if you want to talk to somebody in English, press two if you want to talk to somebody in Spanish. And then after that, I think we've all had that experience. A lot of people say, yeah, but that's very scary, or we're going to lose our jobs. When we first launched Aibo, I had the exactly same reaction. People saying, oof, a robot, oof, that's scary. Ooh, what is going to happen? Is it going to take my job away? When Wikipedia came out, a lot of people were worried, especially teachers, saying that's it. Everything now is going to be digital. Students are not going to learn. They're going to be lazy. It's going to be so easy for them just to do copy and paste from Wikipedia. And this is exactly where we are today, where all these professions will need to transform themselves in order to maybe focus on what's most interesting in that job. Well, with ChatGPT, the question could have been different, saying which job is not going to be affected by ChatGPT. And at this stage, I don't think I could answer that question.
A few months ago, I downloaded one of the beta versions and asked it a question about bird-friendly power line design. Can you give me some examples and tell me more about this? And it provided a fairly detailed answer, and I asked it for references, and it provided me references, and I couldn't find the references, and I came back and asked it for, I can't find the references, help me. And it said, I apologize for the mistake in the previous answers. None of the references I listed exist. So it actually generated what looked very much like scientific references because it knows how to do that. And maybe it wouldn't do that today because this was a few months ago, but it's a natural language model and it's using the internet to learn. And then I think you also described at the edge, it's then maybe doing some federated learning to customize for every one of us who's talking to it. Mm-hmm. And it also is generative, so it can concoct things that maybe out of all of the language and all of the internet that maybe don't actually exist. Can you help us understand like the implications of that and how we can protect against that?
Camille, that question, to me, in any other setting, I would say it lied to you. It said something that in the end, it knew it wasn't true. It admitted it, so it's probably better than a 4-year-old. You know, a 4-year-old to just keep lying. But at least this one, it lied to you, and then it said, oh, I'm sorry, I lied to you.
Well, to be honest, it couldn't lie because it couldn't invent a story. The story has to come from somewhere. The last version as well, ChatGPT 3, I asked one day, a client asked me for a bio, and I had really a short period of time. So I just put on ChatGPT, I said, write me a bio about Nicolas Babin, born on April 966 in France. The beginning was superb. And then the end, he got me mixed up with somebody else. So suddenly I found myself with a bio that I couldn't use.
I hope it didn't write in your death too.
So we're talking about glitches, definitely. But the thing is, human needs to stay and remain at the center of all this, because otherwise it's going to be going places where we really don't want it to go.
Because it's a natural language model, and you had mentioned even with Aibo, you know, French, Spanish, German, English, maybe Japanese, and I'm not sure a few others, but I know this has maybe been an issue or was an issue initially with the internet, where vast majority of content going on the internet was in English to begin with, and then sort of expanded. As the basis or the underlying model of ChatGPT starts generating things like, say, movies, it's going to have to be pulling from what exists already to learn from it. So does that mean we're going to have more and more content siloed into certain kinds of languages and not being able to replicate other things or sort of provide a very curated, specific version of humanity because it's only able to look at what already exists?
As of today, absolutely yes. But language is not an issue anymore. At the European Commission, for example, you have an earbud that translates automatically. So you don't need, normally you have somebody in a room that has their help trying to understand and it's a very, very difficult job. I've done it before. It's extremely hard. But now with technology, we've been able to avoid having these people. And it's like you're communicating in the same language. If both of you have those earbuds, you understand your language in your earbud, and the person in front of you understands their language. And that's also based on AI. The world is becoming smaller already because we were better with airplanes, with trains that go extremely fast, with things like that. But I think the world is going to become even smaller because everybody's going to be able to talk to everybody thanks to technology. And that's what I call tech for good.
Well, to me, it's like we're marching fast towards the future that Gene Roddenberry made with Star Trek. So the earbuds that's the universal translator. ChatGPT is like the whole starship that they could ask it any question and it would always come back with the answer. And
not always come back with the answer. Sorry, I'm interrupting here, but sometimes ChatGPT says, "I'm sorry, I cannot get the information for you."
Yeah, just like
I've
the
had
starship
that.
said sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to change it up just a little bit and ask you about the creative arts where
Mhm.
people were using AI to paint a picture or to stylize things. How similar or related is that type of work to what we've been talking about around generative AI?
It's generative AI for art. It's exactly the same thing. So you can say, draw me a frog on Mars with blue colors, and it will do it. The combination of both ChatGPT and those tools, because you have several of them, actually make something that is really unbelievable. And why today it's going to be even more important is that, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. So you could potentially create a piece of art that is unique because it comes out of your brain and you created it using a tool, and then start selling NFTs around that piece of art. We haven't started to talk about metaverse, but metaverse using NFT as the main economical token, if I could say, to exchange, to create an economy, and this is why, again, I believe metaverse is going to take off, because back in 2000, when Second Life came up and Sony had invented also a home system, we couldn't see it really taking off because there was no economy around it. We didn't know how to make money out of that. Whereas today you have Nike talking about Google, talking about Meta. These guys are pouring in money. And also you have people going in, exchanging those NFTs. And so you definitely can lose money, you can make money, but you're starting to be in a phygital world, half physical, half digital, with a proper or its own economy.
What kinds of technologies or policies or checks do you envision emerging so that we have any kind of a sense that if we're asking for something that Nicolas Babin said, it's really you, like you can attest to that, or we're sure that you generated it. It's not just coming up with something based on other things you've already said or videos it sees of you online.
The only way, to me, I would say is by using blockchain technology. Then you can make sure it's me, because it'll be date stamped from my own digital signature and things like that. But
I mean, I think you're heading in one of the directions I can imagine. It just seems like there has to be a way, or there will soon have to be a way for any of us to know that what we're looking at was truly generated by the person that any model is telling us made it, right? This is a piece of art,
okay,
or here's an
yeah,
audio clip or a video clip. Is it a video clip? I don't know.
I know that many large companies like Google and others are working on these issues about copyright as well. So it's not exactly what
Mhm.
you just asked me, but it's part of the problem, because yeah, I created this frog on Mars. How can I make sure that at least nobody else is going to use that and make money out of it?
Even in that example, you didn't actually create it because the AI tool is using pieces that other people actually created. So it's like a composite of other people's work.
The final version, finally, it's mine. So who owns the copyright of that? Is there a copyright for the frog? and then a copyright for the blue colors, and then a copyright. It's like ChatGPT. Who owns the copyright? What I'm saying is here, let's trust humanity and let's be optimistic for once that we're going to find a way to feel comfortable in terms of all these tools. But the only way to me to feel comfortable is to ensure that human is at the center of all this. If we forget about humans, then we're going to find ourselves in difficult situation.
Well, Nicolas, I think we've come full circle now. It's been a really interesting conversation. And I, for one, am walking away with a hope that maybe I could actually paint a picture for my house now, because I know in the
Absolutely.
physical world that will never happen. But I appreciate you coming in and talking with Camille and I. It was a great topic.
Never miss an episode of InTechnology by following us here on YouTube or wherever you get your audio podcasts.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the guests and author and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Intel Corporation.